It's not cooperating. I think we are. We're live. Yes. Kind of sneaks up on you sometimes. 6:18, a little bit early. A lot of stuff to do. So I want to jump right in and talk about intake manifolds and camshafts. The thumbnail that I have up is a Vortex Supercharged combination that I ran long ago. This one's an LS1. I also ran an LS2, and we ran the Vortex on it, and it did well, as you would expect. You know, like I have talked about before, if you have an NA motor, then you run boost on it. It's just like way better. Anytime you add 100 or 200 or 300 horsepower with boost, it just transforms the naturally aspirated motor. It's good stuff. But we want to get into detail and talk a little bit about minutia today. So I got asked by, it was either on the live feed or possibly a comment or a question somewhere, that the question was a good one, and I didn't really know the answer. And looking back through my data, I think you'd have to create it using very, very specific things. But the question was, can we take a combination and with a mild cam and like a short runner manifold, that combination, can we duplicate that with a long runner and a big cam? So the idea is that, you use one of those things to make low speed power and the other one to make high end power. So in the case of the intake, you would use a long runner intake manifold to make good, low and mid range power, and then use a bigger cam to add more top end. That's the idea. And the same thing with the other combination. You'd use the small cam to make hopefully low and mid range power, and then the short runner intake manifold to kind of extend that out. And then I want to throw another equation onto there, or another variable. I want to talk about boost, obviously, because we're looking at that. The reason that this comes to mind is because I was looking at this test data and the photo of the Vortex that we ran way back, because obviously not just leaving well enough alone. I'm not like regular people. When we did the testing, we ran the motor NA. We ran it with the Vortex. We ran it with a couple of different cams. I did a bunch of stuff while we're on there. I'm there. Let's test it. Let's kind of see what's going on. So do as much testing as I can. But the interesting thing is this combination had a centrifugal supercharger. So if you were on the live feed this morning, we were talking about, what would you do to the cam if you had a centrifugal supercharger? Because a centrifugal blower makes less boost down low, down at 3,000 RPM, let's say, and more boost at the top. It has a rising boost curve. So in the instance of this Vortex that I'm showing you in the thumbnail, down at 3,100, it was making 2.8 pounds of boost. At 6,400, it was making 10.7. So it rose like 8 pounds of boost over that course of 3,300 RPM. So it went from 2.8 to 10.7. So it and this is not unusual. I mean, by the way, this is very, very normal. You can adjust those. You can change the pulley. Instead of 2.9, you can have 3.1 or 3.2, and then you could have 13 or 14 pounds or whatever at the top. So you can change it like that, and that's what happens. A lot of people think that when you change the boost in a centrifugal blower, that it just railroad tracks, that it just adds boost everywhere. That's not what happens. It adds a little bit down low and then more at the top. So the increase gains with RPM. So you have this you still have this diverging trajectory, but it's still low down at the bottom. You don't get a point where you've changed the pulley and now you have 10 pounds down low and 20 pounds up top. It'd be really, really hard to do that because of this multiplier effect of the engine RPM and then the internal step in the inside the blower, and then also the step ratio in the pulleys, 2-to-1, 3-to-1, whatever it is. So it gets hard to do. So as you go up in engine speed, you get a big change in impeller speed. So you don't have very much down low, and you get a lot more at the top. So we talked about that. Would you, and I think it was 70% or so of the people said, yeah, if I was choosing a cam for that, I would pick a cam that adds power in the low and mid range where there's not enough boost or not as much boost, and then let the top end, let this thing charge on the top end because it's going to do that anyways. So now the question becomes, on this test, what I did was we had a long runner intake manifold on. This one had the fast, had an early fast, the Wilson one, so the 78 millimeter one, which back then was the only game in town, but it was a lot better even than the LS6 and certainly a lot better than the LS1 intake manifold, but still a long runner intake manifold. And then we ran it that way. Then we also ran it with a camshaft. The camshaft that we ran was that Comp Extreme Energy 265 cam, and it basically added power everywhere from 3000 to 6400. It added power everywhere. If anything, it added a little more power down at 3000 than it did at the top. But it did this kind of railroad track thing, which was good. And it did that under boost, and it did it NA. It did a very similar thing. And that camshaft worked very well. So that camshaft doesn't show us what happens in our scenario. Did we put a camshaft in that's going to add power, down low, and then we'll let the chips lie where they may. Is that the right description? It didn't really do the thing that we were hoping that it to do. But we didn't try putting a short runner intake manifold on here to charge on the big end either. So this will be our poll for tonight. Let's see. Okay, can a short runner intake and big cam make the same power? Oh no, can a short runner intake and small? Okay. Can a short runner intake and small cam make the same curve as a long runner intake and big cam? Can that happen? And then, as we were talking about this vortex combination, if we did do that, and they made the same curve, and we added boost to it, would they then also be the same? So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you think that would happen? One of the things I would say about that is, I want to talk a little bit more about the vortex deal, but one of the things I would say about that is I always am leery of running lots of engine speed, even when the power curve is climbing, which it typically does, and it certainly would if we combine both of the big things. If we combine a short runner intake manifold, the big cam, and we had the blower on it, and the blower had enough flow and capacity to support this power level at this extended RPM, and we kept revving it and we keep making power. The problem, the thing that worries me always is belt slippage when that happens. So as we go up in, blower speed, we get closer and closer to when belt slippage is possible. If we put a cog belt on there, that's not an issue anymore. We don't have to worry about that, because if the belt slips, you just chewed the belt up and you've destroyed the cog teeth on there, or something else bad has happened. I've never had a problem with a cog belt, so that's not an issue. But if we have a multi-rib deal, a 6 rib, an 8 rib, sometimes even a 10 rib, usually those will work fairly well. But we know that a cog does it perfectly, and anything else might do it perfectly, and then small ones don't do it perfectly. So, and that becomes more aggravated as we go up in engine speed. So those are the things that worry me about running lots of RPM. If we run this thing at 6,000 or even 60, we ran this thing at 6,400, it just, it had the factory belt, or it had the belt supplied by Vortec and the tensioner and all that stuff. And it just worked. It was fine. It's fine in this RPM range. We never tried to go to 7,000, even though it would continue to make power up there probably. At least even if it leveled off, it would still be, making fairly good power. And if it leveled off, that's still where you would want to run it if you were, going down the quarter mile. If it's, even if the power curve is flat, you want that. That's good. That's still good average power for, where you're shifting. That still works. So the Vortec thing worked good on, and we ran it both on the LS1 and on the LS2. And we did cams in both of them. We did, we tried different ported heads on both of these motors, and all of them, like LS stuff does. A lot of this stuff was early on, but a lot of these LS motors, they just continue to make power. And then if we make the nice thing about putting the camshaft in, for instance, when we put the camshaft in, the boost dropped. In fact, I can tell you how much that dropped. So 2.9 to 10, or yeah, 10.7. .6 to 9.6 in the same RPM range. So we dropped it a whole pound out of the top by putting the camshaft in. And the funny thing is, when I talk about this to people and say, yeah, when we put this camshaft in and boost drop, they're like, oh, it must be bleeding out. You must be bleeding the boost out, the exhaust. Like, no, we're not. The only thing we're bleeding out the exhaust is power, because otherwise it wouldn't have made more power. If we just dropped boost, which is certainly possible, if anybody that's ever done any testing and altered the cam timing in a variable cam motor, it's easy to lose boost. It's easy to drop boost and not make any power. But when you do that on something like this and you gain power and you drop boost, that's nothing but good. That's like a win-win deal. So, but you still get those kinds of remarks. I'm curious what people will think on this combination to see if you can make the same curve. My answer to this person was that I didn't think it was possible. I think you'd have to really go out of your way to test a bunch of different combinations of potential camshafts and intake manifolds to get something that like was identical, that matched up, perfectly. I don't think you're going to do that, because I think with intake manifolds, you're going to have weird sine waves and stuff. And I just don't think that that's going to happen. I think you can get close. And I think you get close enough where you couldn't tell what the difference is, maybe at the track or on the street or whatever. But on a dyno curve, if it's not within 1 or 2, then it's not the same for us a lot of times. Honestly, if it's 1 or 2 for me, in most instances, that's the same. I don't worry about that because we're not looking at it that closely. When we get down to picking the nits, like the piston flip thing, where we're looking at the other side of the decimal point, which again is just nonsense, that's the same, because we actually had people argue that, oh, look, it did make power. It's 0.1 horsepower or 0.2 horsepower different or whatever. Them not being there, not having seen a variation in the point, whatever. If you're looking on the other side of the decimal point for some sort of validation, you need to be looking elsewhere. But on the Vortex stuff was good because it made good power. It had a good curve. We were looking at 10 pounds. It did kind of all the things that we wanted to do. Both of these were crate motors. One of them was an LS2 that the guys from GM sent, which was awesome. I think might have been my first crate motor that somebody supplied, which was good. And that was great. And for me, it was exciting because the other ones, the LS1s, belonged to Westech, and they were motors that they had sitting there that we eventually got running and did a bunch of testing with. But then when this one came, not only was it mine, which was great, but also it was bigger. So at the time, it was a sizable step up in power, going from the original LS1 345 horsepower to the LS2, which was 400. So it was a big step up. It was a 6-liter and not a 5.7. It was just it had the 243 heads, which everybody should have. Had a different camshaft in it, different than the LS1 camshaft. It had a different intake manifold too. All of those were good things. And then we thought, oh yeah, this is really, really good. And then they come out with the LS3 and then the LS7. You're like, oh, now we want those other ones. Now we want those other cool ones. But it worked out well. But in the testing, each time we did a change with the camshaft, with the blower, turning the blower up, all those things, it just did exactly what it was supposed to. We ran an air water intercooler. We just ran the dyno water through it, and like I said, it all worked really, really well. And it goes to show you, like on that camshaft that we ran, that small camshaft, we didn't run it down at 2,000 RPM, which we could have seen a difference there. But basically, it was just good everywhere. Particularly with when we ran the blower on it. But we'd also done a test on that 265 cam, and it did good, especially for back in the day. That was one of the first cams out. In fact, I ran that cam on a bunch of stuff back in the day. For a long time, that's my go-to cam. My go-to intakes and cams. That's right. Dennis Marshall, Houston Auto Works. Getaway, what's up? Do you have any builds for a Vortec 4200? I have videos up on turbocharging one, but I haven't done cams or anything like that in them yet. I have 20 minutes for knowledge. All right. What is it you want to know? Boost creep kills. Sometimes that can work to your advantage if you have a rising boost curve. Even on a turbo thing, that drag manifold that we used to run on the Honda stuff all the time was notorious for boost creep, because they had the wastegate, which was undersized probably anyways, but off to one side of it where it was really only wastegating one or two of the cylinders, and it just wasn't enough. For high horsepower twin turbo 6-liter, I would suggest using a stroker setup or stick with a standard stroke. It depends on how much power you can make or you want to make. The stroker stuff, in my opinion, if you're going to go a bigger bore and you're using the stock block, you can get to the limit of the stock block without going to a stroker assembly with turbos on it. Like our big bang thing that was 1,500 and 1,500 plus horsepower, that was just a standard stroke. And so I also don't know what you're doing with it to figure that out. I mean, if you're trying to get 800 or 900 or 1,000 horsepower, then there's no reason to worry about that. The answer is CVT, a better transmission. Kevin can help with 4,200 questions. I'd love to get a Novi 2000 or D1 SC for a future build. Always been interested in trying out a centrifugal. Road race guys like the power curve over turbos, less than a predictable surge. Yeah, you have to drive a turbo car differently for road racing, certainly. Overclocked my CPU on my computer to export a long video faster. Currently about an hour into trying to get it stable. It's a good use of time. All right. My van has a loud intake and the side exit exhaust on it now. So it's fully built. That's good. For some people, fully built means it's washed and waxed, all that. I bet you could make the same curve shape, but not near the same numbers. So you think it would be one of those would be all the way lower or all the way above that? I don't think that would be the problem. I think you'd have a shape problem. I think you could get them very comparable in peak power and peak torque. I just think that they probably would do it differently. I think there'll eventually be aftermarket performance-oriented CVT transmissions that change a lot of people's minds about CVTs if it's reliable and better performing than an equivalent automatic. As long as they could get it working right, I don't know why it wouldn't be like a jet boat is, like a jet ski is, all of those things where you're up in the good part of the power curve all the time. If the curves were the same, they wouldn't both setups be poorly optimized in some way? I don't know what you mean by poorly optimized. The question to us was just whether or not we could duplicate it. That's what we're trying to do. We're not saying that either one of them is ideal in any way. We're just saying that can we go about doing the same thing two different ways? A wrong cam on purpose? Yes. So it's always the wrong cam. Which one of those would be the wrong cam? They both would, obviously. Long runner manifold will have more linear flat torque curve to about 6,000. Mortal Kombat. You're playing Mortal Kombat right now? Don't get me wrong, CVTs are horrible. I just think there will be one that comes out just based on principle, not marketability. I raced my 6-speed Nissan Versa against Brulé's CVT Nissan Versa, and they were just dead even. So from a performance standpoint, it was pretty effective. Been interested in full electric transmissions. Replace the clutch with 2 large motor generators to make a massive and heavy transmission with poor efficiency. That's what people want. I didn't see the turn there coming up. Long rudders are better unless you're running 7,000 RPM. The idea is to swap non-roller forward to roller. I have roller lifters for roller blocks, and the vertical link lifters are 2685. Normally, when you do a retrofit deal, is it a small base circle cam? I thought that it was. Already own the spider tray, dog bones. Not looking to swap the link bars. I know you can still drill and tap the block as long as the oiling passages line up and stuff. But I thought that they changed the base circle of the cam to make that work. I don't think the small cam short runner could make the top end power that the large cam and long runner would. So I don't see how the power curves could be close. Okay. It blows my mind how much information you and many others like Billy and Ben and Leg are giving out. There's still so much bad information out there. Yeah, but bad is a subjective thing. There's lots of people that think that what I'm saying about turbo camshafts isn't right. There's a lot of cam manufacturers out there that think this guy doesn't know anything about cams. We got to talk about valve events. Let's just talk about the results. You talking about valve events is just you talking about what might happen. Let's just go right to what happened. It's a lot better. Finally putting the trans in the Fox tomorrow. 300 wheel horsepower be too much for someone new to fast discharge? No, it's be fine. It's be perfect. Because it can always be less than 300 wheel horsepower. It can be a lot less. It can be nothing. I have an F303 Plus. I believe that's considered a standard base circle. It is. As for my stroker or standard stroker question, I'm looking to build an all-out twin turbo drag motor for no prep. And how much, I have no idea, like on these no prep deals, how much power are they actually putting down? Is this 1,000 horsepower deal? Is it 1,500? Is it 2,000? I thought that the lifter bores on non-roller small block forward blocks were shorter. I did too, Breaks. I thought that was the case. That's why I thought that you had to have a smaller base circle cam to bring the lifter down so that the oiling orifice intersected properly on the lifter galley. I can't swear to that though. That's just me kind of remembering that. I've been investigating EGR removal on small block forward, and it appears you lose 1 to 2 miles per gallon when you remove it. When you do that, did it alter what it was doing with the timing? Lifter borers are shorter. Should that be shorter? Okay, there we go. 1,500. You want 1,500 plus, and you're going to do that with a stock block, Marshall? I don't think it needs to be a stroker. If you're running lots, unless you're running, well, you probably wouldn't run lots of RPM with that. Because, short stroke. You can, as we've seen, you can easily make 1,500 with a 6-liter. No prep all-wheel drive trucks are putting down some serious power. Yeah, if they have traction for that. The thing that I'm worried about is that level with a stock block. Whether you go, I mean, a forged rotating assembly is going to be a must anyways. But I just don't know if running that power a whole bunch of times is going to work with a production block. I don't know how many runs you get like that. Nonetheless, I'm trying to find proper roller lifters that are non-link bar. Okay. There goes Richard sucking the magic right out of it again. I know. It's my wife's Fox. I don't want her to destroy it. She thinks the Murano is best. LSA versus ANA, Corvette, LS2, truck Norris cam, street driven, everything else stock. Which would you choose and why? That's not up to me. That's up to you. You get to pick them. I just show you what they do. I show you what the power curves are. And then you go, I like that, or I don't like that. I don't like the way that looks. I do like the way that looks. I like one over the other. For me, I don't have to choose that because I don't have a Corvette with an LS motor in it that I'm thinking about supercharging. And you wouldn't want the thing that I pick anyways, or you wouldn't necessarily want that because I'm not an expert at that. I'm not an expert at deciding what should be in James's Corvette. You are. You're the only expert. They both are great. They both make lots of power. They do power differently. So whichever one provides the power curve that you want, that's the one you should use. I can tell you that that an LSA blower is immediate boost response, and more people probably would enjoy that in the same way that they would enjoy a smaller turbo or a smaller camshaft, because you get to sample it more often. You don't have to wait for the charge on the top end where you're already probably breaking the law because you're going too fast. But you can roll into it and do like squirts with the positive displacement blower, which more people I think get to enjoy. My truck's stock, so I'm the wrong guy to ask about that. HP Tuner's ECM going to live up to the hype, or is it overrated and unnecessary? Hasn't HP Tuners been around for a long time, or you're saying that they have their own computer now? Turbo Centra, all right, good. All-wheel drive LS turbo bills are unstoppable and no prep. Have you seen the all-wheel drive turbo Monte Carlo? Guys have been doing all-wheel drive stuff, like the Honda guys have been doing this for a while. And if you can put power down, and particularly on traction limited surfaces, if you can put power down, you're going to win, because the guy that's 60 foot is usually the guy that's going to win. Always go down on the size of the cam a couple steps. Yep. Gen 3 to Gen 4 5.3. I know I need dock and crank sensor extender cables. Do I need anything else? Are you wiring it like in a vehicle? And what harness are you using? The sensors are in the valley on the Gen 3, and they're over on the sides on the Gen 4. But a Gen 3 and a Gen 4 harness are going to be different. So is the motor a Gen 4 and the harness is Gen 3? Because you're going to have other issues too. Winston, what's going on? So does the cam make a TPI intake not make peak power 4,500? I don't know that there's enough cam for that not to happen. We had a really big cam in that 383 that I did all the tune port testing on. I'm sure that still makes people mad that one that I did it on a 383 and one that I did it on a 383 with just like a 240 cam in it, which is not good. I'm talking LSV8s and all-wheel drive. I haven't seen the all-wheel drive Monte Carlo. HP Tuners Core ECM standalone for Gen 3, Gen 4 only for 2000 and supposed to be magical. It feels 20 years late. They're just now coming out with a product for the 2020. Going into a 2002 Trans Am with stock computer, and it's an LS1 to Gen 4 LC9 swap. Okay. First gen Tesla S was pretty weak up top, but they did 60 foot well. Whenever I see like the Tesla Plaid race against a car that has lots of power, the Tesla always jumps out like a few lengths. And then the other car a lot of times has more power to try to reel it in. But it's hard because the Tesla Plaid, at least, also goes very fast. Using the force against us? I was. This is not the camera that you're looking for. Anyone purchased a new HP Tuners Core ECU? I'm looking forward to On the Gas's S10 Coyote all-wheel drive tech. I did see that because somebody posted something on Facebook and I saw that. '91, 988 turbos ruin the Plaids. Even from a standing start? I don't think I've seen a Tesla Plaid get beat by another production car. But I'm not hanging out with Plaids. That's not me. That's not what I'm all about. Richard, have you done any testing on centrifugal supercharged tune port motors? What does the power curve look like? It will extend it a little bit, but not a lot. Let me look and see. I don't remember running the. Oh, we did a tune port. We didn't do a tune port with a centrifugal. We did a tune port with a turbo, though. Let me make sure. Small block Chevy, supercharged. Did we run the? We would have run one with a stealth ram, but not a factory tune port. We did run the turbo with a factory tune port, though. And the turbo made the same power curve, I think. Pretty sure that it did. Turbo L98. Final stock. Okay, that's not stock. Yeah, with a turbo, it made peak power at 47 or 4,800. Same thing as it did NA. Made a lot of torque. Made 600 foot-pounds. No trophy for news because I haven't done anything yet. Look up 991 or 992 versus plaid. Need a 2002 body control module. Still rather have a 10.5 turbo LS build versus a Tesla running 9s. I'm not a Tesla fan. I mean, you can't deny that it's impressive acceleration because if it runs 9s, that's if we had a car running 9s, we would be bragging about it. And so that is impressive. So the acceleration is, but I'm a, I'd rather have internal combustion engine. From a roll isn't close after 80. No, I wouldn't think so. But the thing that's impressive about the, an electric deal is that the instant torque and also the traction and traction control. If you could get that to launch off the deal, it's impressive. Everyone who over turbos their engine says turbo lag is fun. It's a lie. Don't believe it. Everyone who over turbos theirs. We over turboed the Civic for Bonneville, and that 72 millimeter on the 2-liter. The 72 millimeter wasn't too bad. It's not something you'd want on the street because you'd get killed if you tried to get in. It was basically mostly just post VTEC kind of boost. So the smaller turbo stuff was a lot more fun. I did a lot of testing on B16s and B18s on the engine dyno with different size turbos, and the small ones were definitely better. And having small turbos on my Focus and on my D series stuff, it just was a lot more fun. It's the same thing with the turbo on the Omni, which I need to go pick up. It's better to have boost like all the time. Although I do want E85 and I do want a different intercore. Richard just gave me a flashback of typing class in middle school. I've been writing stories for most of my life now, and I still don't know how to type. I still never took typing and haven't learned typing. I can't wait to just do talk to text kind of thing. What about a C8 Z06? What about it? Oversized turbos and oversized cams don't go well together. No, and then throw in a short runner intake manifold, and then an undersized motor too. That was my point about that was my point to Matt at Sloppy. I'm like a 4.8 and a 78-75 and a Sloppy Stage 2 cam. I said, I know it makes a lot of power, and a high ram than the high ram. I'm like, but that's a terrible street combination. Hello, what are you doing, huh? Hello, Bruno. Oh, I know. Hello. I'll come feed you in a little bit. I know you're a little bit sleepy though, huh? You do, huh? No, say hello. Say hello. Oh, hello. Hello. I'll come give you guys stuff in a little bit. Go lay down. What more? I know. There's just never enough petting, huh? There's never enough, huh? There's just never enough, huh? He's a good boy. He's a good boy. You are. Now, where's your brother at? Where's Brady? Where's Brady? Okay. I know. When the boost comes on, a big turbo setup with a little lag is awesome. I remember seeing hello, are you back? I just pet you. I remember seeing the power curves on some of the really big turbo Supras and RB motors, and it's like, woo! they really come on. And gain, I don't know, 300 or 400 horsepower and a couple hundred RPM. It's a lot. I think you have a turbo and a torque storm. I need noises and smells with my 9s. Yeah. Electric torque is awesome. It doesn't have to be competition. They're both great. Yeah, I agree. I've driven some Teslas, and if for people that like to feel that sort of acceleration, it's pretty cool. Use my stock coil packs. I think that the plugs are going to be the same. I'll tell people right away that my car is not optimized for the street. It's got a 235, 248 cam, a fast instead of trick flows, and it doesn't make steam till $5,000. Is that one that has a turbo on it? It's like the guys that must have 1,000 horsepower, but they have a stock truck rim and a 255. That's gonna melt. Sloppy Crowd had a panic attack that was running a GTX 3584 instead of a 7875 because that's the only turbo for an LS. Mad throws shade on the GT45s all the time, and I'm like, why? It's for a 700 horsepower combination. I think it's a better choice than a 7875. I don't want the car, but I'm envious of the acceleration and capabilities of what common people are buying in the upper end Teslas. Yeah, that it is impressive. But I don't begrudge somebody for going out there and being successful and having enough money to have a car like that. I think that's fantastic. I remember when I was at the Virginia City Hill Climb put on by the Ferrari Owners Club, there's a guy there that brought, and this was when it was new, brought an F40, and people were like, "Oh, it's just a rich guy." I said, "No, that guy's awesome. Not only did he go out and succeed, but he used his success to buy a car like that, arguably one of the baddest cars around, and he's also brought it out and is going to drive it up the hill." I said, that's something we all should celebrate. I said, we can all be jealous and wish that we were that cool and we had that Ferrari and the leggy supermodel that I'm sure that he was with, but I don't begrudge somebody stuff like that. I think that that's fantastic. So that's the NA, and the G10 has a turbo. Okay. 222 cam, doesn't spool till 3,800. Have you been watching? I forgot the guy's name, but somebody on Facebook is doing a turbo G10. Have you seen him? I can't remember his name now. I don't have my phone with me to look it up. But he's doing a build up on it, and it's pretty cool. I have an LS3 cam, Whipple stock heads. Would the heads make a big difference? I don't think I would change the heads. Unless you're talking about, do you have LS3 heads or do you have some other different kind of head? And what size is the motor? Similar to being in the gym all your life and someone with superior genetics and abilities comes by and surpasses your work in a year or two. There will always be people that, you get people that are very, very dedicated. And so they work all the time. My wife was like that. She played competitive. She was a swimmer in water polo, and she had like a crazy drive. But if you have somebody that has that, and they also have like some kind of natural talent, like you could be the second best guy in the NBA, and you happen to go to school with Michael Jordan. You're like, really? Or you could be a swimmer. You could be the greatest guy in your state, and then you go swim against Michael Phelps. You're like, yep, I get it. And it's not because you didn't try and you didn't work hard and you didn't do everything that you possibly could. He's just that much better. I think if I were rich, I would still have a bunch of fast beaters I can tear it versus a really expensive, nice car. Ignacio, an LS3 is fine. An LS3 with the Whipple, I wouldn't change the heads on it. You have enough head flow to support a bajillion horsepower, especially with you have enough head flow to max out whatever that supercharger will do. You could put together a cheap turbo kit for the price of a good set of heads. If set of heads is going to be a couple grand, right? I could take Michael Phelps in a race. You could take him to lunch. Richard, did you ever test the Isky JFR 212 cam? I don't know. I'll have to look back on the sloppy stage 2 versus the world data. Richard, my build will be an LC9 VTR hot rod cam 799 heads ported LS6 intake manifold. It all depends on what you do with how well you do with the ported heads. But it's somewhere between, I don't know, 450 and 480 or something like that, probably. Howard Garage is my friend, Russell Grimes. He's doing how to make your Metro faster. He also has a mid-engine turbo 3800 Camaro. The 3800 from the Camaro with the turbo in a Geo Metro. Telling only gets you partway. The professionals like Michael Jordan have incredible work ethic. They do. I mean, he did. You have to have all of that. That's why I like watching the Olympics. I like watching people that have dedicated essentially that part of their life, that time segment of their life, to do the very best that they can. And then a lot of other things have to happen too. You get to, like in the Olympics, you get to the Olympics, people get COVID, and it just destroys their whole thing. If what you are going to do is peak right at the right time, so that, because they get really detailed about what's going on with your body and stuff, and so if you are in the best possible shape for your 100 meter run or 200 meter run or swim or whatever you're doing, and then you get COVID the week before or whatever, and it just totally knocks you down, instead of 100%, and now you're down to 88% or 92 or whatever the number is, and another guy was, that you were going to beat, he was at 97, he stays at 97, that's a tough thing to come back from. Oh, that's camo paint. Okay, auto-corrected guy. I was wondering, Camaro, I mean, like, it's like, wow, he's getting fairly descriptive there. I know when I was doing the American Ninja Warrior stuff, no amount of work ethic on my part at my age was going to overcome 20-year-olds. It just wasn't going to happen. Michael Jordan had 40-point games when he was sick and had the flu. Yeah. And and then he also had 60-point games when he was good. I do like watching his highlights, and I watch a lot of the interviews about Magic and Bird and these guys. Even Dennis Rodman, all of these guys talking about they've got Bird stories, Magic stories, and Michael Jordan stories and stuff. It's all really cool to hear some of that stuff that was going on behind the curtain. It's just that's because I didn't follow. Watched basketball a little bit, but I was not an avid follower, and certainly didn't look like at the behind the scenes stuff. It's kind of cool to see that stuff. It's kind of cool to come out and hear all of those guys that were. It's cool to hear the descriptions from the original Dream Team about all the other guys, because all Magic and all these guys that were there during this time, these guys were no jokes. And when those guys are saying, yeah, when Michael walked in and started talking trash, you're like, oh yeah, what is this? We're going to school this guy. He's like, yeah, that didn't really happen so much. And I love all the stories about guys talking trash to Michael Jordan and then him just destroying them. He's like, took only one time. I learned you don't do that. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Malcolm Gladwell has a great book called Outliers, and the Olympics have unfair advantages. You need rich parents to pay for training. So you think that everybody that's there is there because they have rich parents? That's 100% not true. Look at the people from other countries. Those are some of the best stories. Rich is relative, yeah. For those guys, it's enough to have like plane fare. I was a Pistons fan. They definitely had their day, and so did the Celtics. I liked watching the stuff, the run up to where Michael Jordan became Jordan, because they were always talking about how small he was and that he was always a great shooter, but that he could be manhandled and bullied by the Celtics and by the Pistons and stuff when he first started. But how he decided to get a trainer, work out, get in shape, get bigger, get more physical, and be able to take care of himself. It's pretty cool. I figure most of us are Pistons fans. Yeah. Poll question: no. Doesn't TPI prove no? Can a short runner intake and small cam make the same curve as a long runner intake? Well, and one of the things that we talked about was, which ones are you talking about? Are you talking about the Skyram and then a 280 at 50 camshaft? It'd be specific to the things that you're talking about. My buddy got kicked off the boxing team for weed in '88. He's broke, always has been, or was, because he passed away. Milo, I'll be down in a minute. I'll be down, yo. I'm down. 82% said no. Who else? Somebody else. Oh, Sha'Carri Richardson, is that her name? In the last Olympics, she tested positive. I think it didn't get to go, and then was able to come back. And that's got to be even harder to, like I said, you've been running and training and doing all this stuff for years and years and years, and then when it comes around, guess what? You don't get to go. So here, go do that another 4 years. That would be hard. Can runners be too long for what? Not if you continue to want to optimize power production in a lower and lower RPM range. I mean, I think at some point that becomes, just like with cam timing, I think that at some point it probably becomes ineffective. It would certainly become ineffective or less effective with any given cam timing. I think you'd have to maybe shift that also. It wasn't at the length that they had the Skyram at, particularly with the cam that they ran in that, which was not a good match with the motor that they were running it on. But when they ran the Skyram, it didn't make peak torque like at 1500 RPM. It actually had like this weird power bulge in an RPM range that you wouldn't expect. It was higher than I thought. Tunnel rams are awesome. I agree. I'm thinking that a 212 cam, a Trailblazer SS 78, 75 would make a responsive 4853 street combination. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much power you're trying to make. I think I'd pick a smaller turbo than that. Can we cut up 2 Skyrams to make a double Skyram? that thing's flimsy enough as it is. What I wanted to do is it's a lot easier. The 3D printed thing was awesome. I mean, it looked cool, but the easier way to do it is the way that I did it before that, is that you just do tubes, and that way we could go up to the ceiling and come back down if we wanted, and then just put the plenums like on the side of that and have a dual plenum thing. I'm putting a comp cam 54700. I'm not familiar with that number. My LSVOP K10, do you think we'll have a hard time idling with the AC on? I don't know what the duration at 50 is in that camshaft. I want a Skyrim that won't clear an overpass. It's pretty tall. You could certainly make it. I'm trying to think. I don't know. You could make it 10 or 12 feet long, I think. 487 X heads. That's what is that for? I'm certain on the tune port question that a centrifugal blower would raise the RPM where the motor makes peak power. I'm certain that that's the case. I don't know how much that is, though. Maybe did I run a... Let's see if I ran a Ford like that. Because a Ford HO manifold is basically what a TPI manifold is. It's the Ford version of that with the long runners on it. Torque Storm. Test description. 11 Rs, TFS, comp, street heat, long runner. Yeah, that actually made kind of... Well, I'm surprised that did that. Test description. So TFS Street Heat, I guess, is what I was calling it. I'm not sure which one it was. 11R heads, the 224 cam, Explorer short block. And then that made peak power all the way out at no, that's not too high, 62 or 6,300. And then with the torque storm, it was out there. And we only went to 6,400. Oh, the camshaft, a 218 cam in a, what size motor is that in? Built for dirt. Go read the 10 intake small block Chevy TPI shootout Richard wrote a long time ago for Super Chevy. Tell you what all fuel injected popular intakes from the 90s do. Oh, the small block ones, yeah. Name your SC Skyrim. I've seen an intake made from 4, 6, or 8 foot long pipes in a junkyard digs video. Yeah, that's been, guys have been doing that stuff for a really long time. Speaking of centrifugal blowers, I kind of want to do a blower E-ray. Is Toyota as a company falling apart, or have they just lowered their standards to match the competition and low skilled labor and has caught up with them in factory stock cars? I don't have an answer to that. I think the way power builds in a centrifugal would be offset by an EV motor. Yeah, it'd have low speed power. Is if you had like as a hybrid thing you're talking about? What I didn't realize Toyota was struggling with anything. I'm not hip on that. Richard, would Vortec heads and a mild cam get me 350 crank? 350 crank was like a 268 cam, I think, when we did it with a dual plane. If I remember right, because we ran the small camshaft that Pure Energy, which I like because it's idled really nice and stuff. Let's see down here. There we go. 268 cam made 343. That's a 224, 231 cam. 350 Vortec heads. This is this one's a flat tappet cam. Speedmaster dual plane 650 XP, inch and 3/4 headers, MSD. That should give you an idea. I don't know what the compression was on that motor. For 1,000 to 1,200 horsepower, 6-liter on 85 streetcar, what budget twins would you pick? Probably GT 3582s for 1,000. Maybe something a little bigger than that for maybe those. Viren probably has something, or the 366s, maybe something like that. The E-Ray is a hybrid C8. Yeah, that's the ZR1 Plus hybrid drive thing. Worked for Toyota when I was younger. They never had those vast and numerous recall issues. Toyota was this, when I was recommending cars and stuff to people. Honda was always first, and then Toyota was second because they always made good stuff. I didn't realize that they had a fall from grace. Have you heard of comp drift cams? I've heard people mention them. I don't know what they are, what makes them different. They claim valve train stability 7,500 with blue springs and stock heavy valves. Must be some slow lobes. I think that they probably did do very stable low profiles. They're probably a low lift cam, right? If they're using blue springs, it's probably a low lift cam and lots of duration, which is going to be stable. And so they're not going to be super powerful cams, but they will rev, which is what the drift guys want. Hot mess. We already did the poll. It's already off. It just said, do you think Richard's cool? And it was like 100% no. On a 6-liter 5.3 and 4.8 fast intake test versus factory with a 5.3 engine, is it possible you had the Trailblazer SS intake manifold on it? No. Do you have the same intake? They're all the same. We had early truck manifolds on it. In fact, we had the same early truck manifold on all of those. Because I have one that's set up for when we run it at Westech. It has the line on it. It has the rail and injectors and everything. All that stuff's already set up. So all we have to do is just put it on there. It has a throttle body on there already. GT45 versus T76. I think the GT45 will make a lot more power than the T76 will. At least the one that we've been using from CX Racing. Valve train, would you recommend running a BTR hot rod cam in a 5.3? What are you asking? What valve train? Talk to the guys at BTR about the spring that they would recommend for that camshaft. But they have dual springs for that. The poll is, can you make good horsepower without Goldens? Yeah, obviously no. For the Dodge Magnum 5.2 and 5.9, can't rev because the lifter bores are thin and weak. Why would that stop it from lifting? I mean, why would that stop it from revving? The lifter bore is going to break. Well, 5.3 and 218 cam idle nicely with the AC on. 218, well, and that's a wide LSA cam too, right? It's not going to idle like a stock one. And it's getting up to the point where it's big enough that I would be a little bit worried about it. But maybe with the right tune, that's not going to be an issue. One more minute. I got to go get Bruno. He's a food. He's already coming to talk to me. He's laying right there. He's guarding. He's on guard dog duty. Variable geometry turbos. Those are cool. I've seen the only ones we've ever seen that we've used on anything are the ones that came factory, like the VNT turbos and stuff. The guys from the car farm have a couple of vehicles there with the variable turbos on theirs too. Richard, what size V-band are you using coming off the hot side? The exit of the GT45? I don't even remember. I don't know if it's a 3.5 or a 4. It's been a while since I ran that. I'm thinking the GT45 is 3.5. And then we're feeding it with a 3-inch. So why is the exhaust bigger? And we're also feeding the T6 turbos with a 3-inch V-band. But all of that exhaust is hot and it goes in there. I'm actually excited about putting a little turbo on the Metro. Run it with the Holly to start out with, but then I want to run it with the Haltech. Yeah, you got to do springs, some springs. Exotic ECU. I know. I think the next time I go down, I'm going to bring the Haltech Rebel and we'll run an LS with that. And then I'm also going to bring I'll bring the Holly, and then also the guys from Haltech got me a setup that I think will work on the Sprint. So what I want to do is, with Eric's help, get it running on the Metro. And then after I do that, then swap the Sprint motor into the Metro so we can run the turbo motor. Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Brady? Did you come up and say hi? Are you getting hungry too? Huh? Hello. 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 What are you doing? stuff. 100% doing springs and lifters. Not sure if I can use my LS1 push rods. Also Gen 4 rocker arms. Those are the same. The Gen 4 and Gen 3 rocker arms should be the same. I had to say VVT. Is the Haltech EFI better? No, I'm not doing that. They just wanted me to try it. It's actually supposed to be easier. And so I want to see, I'm going to learn something new. We're going to try that. You did, son. Sean, you used the force and summoned the golden and made everything better. Certainly Brady. Nope. There's no better, at least not for what I'm doing. Although the Haltech will be much better than the factory ECU on the Metro and on the Sprint motor. Then I can finally run the thing and test it the way that I've wanted to test it for years and years and years since we set those maxed in mile records. Charging hard on the big end. That's it. Yeah, if we say that, they go running over to the. If we say the S word, they go running over and attack the window that goes out into the backyard. He sells a 3.6 V band down to 3-inch. You're going to neck the exhaust down. You should be able to find cones that do that. If you just do a search for 3.5 to 3-inch reducers, you'll see some. There'll be some there definitely. The Westech guys had some because they'd use them on the chassis dyno side. Probably threw all that stuff away. Stainless V-band reducers and stuff. It just saddens me. Plus, on the Haltech, it'll be interesting for me to do like the installation on one because I'm a regular guy, so I'll be average Joe from Average Joe's Gym, and be able to install it on the motor and go, hey, look, this is as easy as it's obviously a lot easier when you know and have done it 100 times like the Holly setup, but have 3-inch exhaust on the car, okay, that'll be good. Make lots of power. And on that note, it is time to go, but I'll see you guys all in the morning. Click, 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 click.